Hello and welcome to another Conversations at the Summit brought to you by Climb UK. I'm Tanya, Arnold, and on this episode, time is precious. Social impact isn't just about giving money, but providing purpose.
How many times have we seen the piece of paper or the thing on the wall that says, this is who we are?
Yep.
And people walk past it and go, that's not who we are. People aren't stupid. We all can see it. You've got to live your purpose. It takes years sometimes to build trust, and it takes seconds to destroy it. People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. And you're selling that to people who are like-minded, and they're the people that you want on the bus.
We're joined by Annabel Tonge, a director at Q5 and its foundation director, and alongside her, as ever, Climb's very own Gordon Bateman. Annabel, before we talk about Q5 and the work that you're doing there, I wanted to take you all the way back to Bingley, where you were grown up, and a career that has taken you as far away from there, but all the way back to Yorkshire at the same time.
Yes, that's true, actually. I grew up in Bingley, very happily grew up in Bingley, but left when I was 18 and never really came back. I don't know if my parents were happy or sad about that, but that's basically what happened. I went to Edinburgh Uni, and then from there I pursued a career that took me around the world. In fact, you can probably sum it up by saying I have 3 children that were all born in 3 different continents, and none of them were born in the UK. So that probably is a nice, neat way of saying what happened to me in my 20s and my 30s, yeah.
So what was the job that took you around the world?
So I worked for Procter & Gamble. I was very lucky. Spent the first sort of 20-odd years of my career in corporate. And I worked for Procter & Gamble for about 11 years before moving. Well, actually, it's too long to explain, really, but before moving to Ireland. And when I moved to Ireland, I left P&G and I joined a company called Apple Green, which was a fabulous move. Became their marketing and sales global director. And from there, SSE, utilities. And then from there, springboarded back eventually to Yorkshire. So now I'm actually living in Leeds, which is great.
I mean, it's a hell of a career path. What was it like?
So it was fun, really great fun. 20s and 30s to me were about adventure. I think everybody has a different purpose that they want to pursue, and we're going to talk about that today. But I was very lucky to meet my husband in my early 20s, and we had a very similar ethos about life. Life was for living, life was for enjoying, and for learning, and for meeting great people, and having a career, positive career path along the way. And that's really what we did. And actually, if I'm honest, that's still what we're doing. Even as we're now into our 50s, that's still what we're doing. We're just doing it in different ways now.
But once you have kids thrown into that, it becomes quite a juggle, doesn't it?
It does. And again, that's something that we're going to talk about today is purpose. But actually, purpose as you move through life does change. I think people think, I need to know what my purpose is. There's a lot of chat about purpose, as we know, and making an impact. But actually, it's not an endpoint. It's a journey. And the purpose that I had and the objectives that I had in my 20s and 30s had to change in the 30s and 40s, and have changed again since. And that's the same for everybody.
So what brought you back to Yorkshire finally?
So again, it was career. Interestingly, I'm from Yorkshire. My husband's from Ireland, but it was his career that brought us back. He was offered a role to expand his capability, and we moved back to Leeds. That was a good space for him. That was where my family was, and then I joined Hallmark Cards actually as the managing director there, and I ran the M&S division for a few years. Yeah, and that was great fun, up and down to London.
So let's jump to Q5. What is Q5 for a start as a company?
So Q5 is a management consulting firm. It's a mid-sized firm, so it's not as big as Accenture or EY, but they would be some of our competitors in the market. But we specialise in organisational health. But really what it means is we try and make companies healthier. It's usually complex, intertwined ways that we do that, but it covers a myriad of things like strategy, organisational design, actually how you're structured for success as well as how you're set up for success, leadership development, high-performing teams. Do you have the culture to make things work? And do you have the infrastructure, things like IT? Do you have the right systems? And now increasingly AI, of course, Gordon, as you'll know, from the work that you do. So, so we usually come in at points of change or when companies are trying to change. And we put together, a bit like Avengers Assemble, I always think, we put together experts from all these different aspects. We bring them together and we create bespoke programs to help companies become healthier, more productive, more efficient, happier and more successful ultimately.
And it is the toughest part of the business, isn't it? Of any business is the people side of what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. People say it's the soft skill, right? It's the soft skill stuff, but it's always the hard stuff. When you go into businesses, and I've been into multiple businesses now, and we do a diagnostic, it's not uncommon for people to say, you've never seen this before. We're completely unique, and these are our issues. These are our knotty challenges, and they're the same challenges. And invariably, mostly it's about the people. People struggling with systems, people struggling with change, or just some underlying issues. So yeah, so it is. It's often seen as the soft stuff, but it's often the hardest stuff too.
And what was your role in Q5 up in Yorkshire?
So I joined them 7 years ago to set up the Leeds office, which we did, and root them in the locality. They were had an office in London. They had offices around the world, but they didn't have anything up north. So I opened up the northern office. And then, interestingly, when COVID came, I became the marketing director. It was the obvious thing to do. Everything that they were doing at the time was face-to-face. Nobody could do that anymore. And I had the skills from my previous career to do that. So I set up the global marketing enterprise for them, and then moved in January this year to become the foundation director, really looking at the heart and the purpose of Q5 and what it is that we're trying to achieve from a higher point of view.
Why do you think, only 7 years ago, they finally wanted a presence in the north?
So they were up and down in the north, and they realised a few things. One is to truly understand organisations locally, they needed to be based locally. They wanted to provide a base as well for Q5s to live outside of London. As we know, it's extremely expensive. And they wanted as well to expand the organisation. So it was those three things. They knew they couldn't do it from London in a meaningful way, and they knew it was the right thing to do for the businesses that we were serving up here.
And you're travelling all over the world with clients.
Yeah.
But even in the UK, I assume that when you're doing design and looking at organisational health for different regions of the UK, it's a different culture and is that right or not?
Yeah, everywhere we go, there is a nuance to culture. So we've got organisations that we work with in Australia. We've a couple of offices over there. We've got a couple of offices in the US. We're just opening one in Saudi Arabia. We've one in Oman. So it's very different. Absolutely, when you're in a new country with new norms, you have to work within those norms. And even within the same country, if you're in Leeds versus London, I would argue that there are nuances and there are differences. Absolutely,
which is often overlooked, isn't it? It's within organisations, people just think, I'm going to open an office in wherever.
Yes, they do.
And don't think actually that's fundamentally wholly different than where I am right now.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And sometimes that's when we come in, because organisations, maybe certain offices haven't worked, they failed for certain reasons. You need to do a diagnostic, you need to understand, and then you have to reset and go again.
And have you found those different cultures have very different leadership principles and those soft skills that then sort of flow down from how you lead?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. The culture that you operate in will dictate some of the leadership skills. Now, I mean, I know that from my own point of view. When I worked in Hong Kong, having face, you might have heard that expression, but showing face to your superiors or people that were older than you was part of the culture. It's part of the social culture there. And so it was very hard to actually say something direct to someone who was either, directly above you. And if you did, it would have been very embarrassing for the person that you were talking to. So you had to create new ways to get around that and basically work within the culture so that you could say things, but you said them in a respectful way. Whereas we moved, actually, interestingly, from Hong Kong to the US, and it was like a pendulum swing. If you didn't say something to somebody directly to their face, they wouldn't have heard you necessarily in New York. You had to be much more direct.
It's been a big part of what we've been doing at Climb is around helping companies internationalise, either coming into the UK or UK companies moving externally. And it's one thing we talk to companies about is understanding the culture and the dynamism of the place that you're going to. But again, it's something that we see a lot of people just don't know how to do it, or they just don't know they need to do that. And we see a failure all the time. So is there anything you could say to people who are listening to this that'd be helpful if they're thinking of, from your experience of doing that, of what they should look out for?
Absolutely. I mean, everywhere you go is going to be slightly different. It's interesting that I have colleagues who come up from London and they come to Leeds, and you're walking through the train station in Leeds, and invariably you'll say hello to a few people. Not that you know them, but it's just the culture of Leeds, isn't it? And people are, oh yeah, how are you doing? You all right? Yeah. And you'll get through the train station and they'll say, because you know everyone. I don't know anyone in the train. It's just the culture and that's 200 miles apart. So if that kind of gives you, whereas in London you get off the train, it's really busy. There are thousands of people. You can't do that in the same way. So
or you make eye contact on the tube and somebody thinks there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just different dynamics. So the best thing you can do is spend time and listen. Listen to people who live there. Ask loads of questions. Don't move to a location and assume you know everything. Be a sponge. That's what I would say. And take all that on board before you make certain decisions.
And do you find that often global companies will take somebody that they know is successful from one culture and ping them into another one, and that's one of the mistakes that they do, that yes, this person is a proven leader but in a different culture, and they don't necessarily give them the grounding to move from one culture to another.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, often very ambitious people want to go and set up offices in new locations, and it's a phenomenal opportunity if you get that. We've had that within Q5, where we've had people who wanted to go to Australia and set up an office, or the US and set up an office. So it's a great opportunity. But actually, you do need to put the wraparound care around them a little bit, because you don't know what you don't know. You just don't know what you don't know. And that's often where the leadership development comes in, and the orientation work needs to come in so that they're properly supported, because it's not in anybody's interest to land and crash and burn. I mean, nobody wants that. So yeah, absolutely. You do need to do that. And I would recommend companies that they do that.
You mentioned COVID and how it changed your role. Did it change the company's role or shift at all in terms of not being able to do what they were doing, but maybe have a rethink about some of what they were doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID changed everything, didn't it? I mean, either temporarily or more longer term, it had a massive impact. I think for Q5, there are two things that it changed. One was how we operate, just like it did for everybody else, remote working, but remote consulting work was interesting. We had to set up online workshops where normally we're in a room, you've got lots of post-it notes and you're debating and all that kind of stuff. We had to be able to operate online. That was a huge shift, not just for us, but for the whole consulting world. I think culturally it had a major impact, as it did to a lot of businesses. COVID gave a time for reflection, and this is actually where purpose has become more dialed up actually now in the workplace. But it was a time for reflection. If you were sitting at your kitchen table, you might as well have been working for anyone. And that was true for Q5 as it was for other companies. So actually one of the great things that came out of COVID for us was a bit of a pivot for us in terms of the foundation. We knew we were limited in what we could do in terms of the effort to address COVID. We were working with the NHS, actually, setting up the efforts for the Dragon's Heart down in Wales. But we knew as a broader company we were limited. So we set up Pop-Up Consulting. Pop-Up Consulting effectively, at that time, gave free consulting workshops and advice, usually 2 days, to non-for-profits, charities and SMEs, anyone who couldn't normally afford a Q5, but that was effectively struggling because of the pandemic. And we dealt with a whole range of issues at the time. Fundraising, I think at one point 54% of charities were looking at going under, and that included some of the big charities because they couldn't do the coffee mornings, they couldn't do the London Marathon and all that kind of great stuff. And for SMEs, it was cash flow. They realised that actually cash flow was drawing to a halt. Nobody really understood what furlough was at the time. And how do you make your cash flow run for the next 12 to 18 months so that you can still be in business when you come out the other end? So we set up Pop-Up Consulting, and 5 years later, as the foundation director, I oversee that work. We've supported over 170 different organisations in that time, and we've dealt with all sorts of knotty problems. But obviously, as we move through COVID and out the other side, so has the work. So interestingly, during COVID, it was almost fight or flight type work. And as we've moved since then, it's been more about purposeful work, strategy, and building organisations, also responding to new challenges like AI. How do you build and grow and take advantage of those things? So it's a great thing. So it has impacted us in a really good way, actually, in the long term.
I guess that's the thing, isn't it? When we've seen a lot of organisations come out of COVID with now having a more of purpose-driven culture within their organisations. How did that? Was it unanimous within Q5 that was a thing to do, or was there internal challenges to get this off the ground?
No, it was the right thing to do. I think we all wanted to do something. It was the right thing to do, and also for about 3 months we had a bench. We didn't normally have a bench because we're usually fully out with clients, but we had a bench, and we wanted to keep that bench also fully utilised and mentally healthy. Quite frankly, because otherwise people were sitting at home watching the news, and that wasn't particularly healthy. So it was a kind of a combination of looking after our own people, but also wanting to do the right thing externally.
Because I do hear a lot of founders, we talked about this in July as well at Climb, is that a lot of founders of SMEs want to do something. You know, they have a purpose, they recruit people around a purpose, but then they don't know what to do. It's that, and then once it starts, the ball starts rolling, it gains momentum. What was it like right at the beginning when you came up with the idea of we should do a foundation? Give some advice to people who are thinking about it but don't know what to do.
So I'd start with thinking about what it is that you do anyway, right? So it's what is it that you do, and work off that, because it has to be authentic. So that's the first thing. That's a very practical inroad. But I'd also probably suggest you watch the Simon Sinek piece about purpose, if you can get onto YouTube and have a look at that. When he talks about purpose, and this is where we've built a lot of our purpose practice from, people normally talk about the what they do as a start point. It's like, well, what we do, and we talk about how we do it. But actually, where people connect is with the why you do it. So rather than starting what, how, and why, start why, how, and what. Do it that way out. And there's a reason for that. There's apparently a biological reason for that, which is like our limbic brain, you know, our kind of the oldest part of our brain is the bit that is linked to behaviour. And that is the emotional part. And that wants to understand, you know, the why. Why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? And so you have to look at what you do, but it also has to be authentic. It's the why you're doing it. So start with that and go through that process.
Very good.
Yeah.
And it's interesting hearing you talk that there was as much about looking after your own staff, of giving them something and giving them a purpose.
Yes.
And as you've come out of that, we don't have COVID. They're not necessarily sitting in the... Is that still the thing, that they want to be giving back? You know, yes, they've got these careers that are going up. They want to work in the biggest companies. But that actually that bit of purpose is really key to keeping them with you, keeping them happy, keeping them fulfilled.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of research done in this area. Interestingly, 70% of people in the workforce are looking for work to provide some type of purpose for what they do. So we all need purpose. That's the truth. We all need purpose to be happy. I don't know if you've read a book by Arthur C. Brooke, Professor Arthur C. Brooke. He's a Harvard professor. But he talks about the fundamental building blocks of what makes us happy. And happy isn't, again, it's a journey. It's about becoming happierness he talks about. But actually there's 4 building blocks, and one of them is purposeful work. So interesting, 70% of people are looking for purpose in the work they do. The other 30% presumably have lots of great hobbies that are keeping them busy outside of work, and great families and all that kind of stuff. But 70%. And interestingly, Gen Zers, 79% are looking. So that's something that's increasing. And there's a lot of great work done on the impacts of that. So interestingly, if you do have a purposeful workplace, ultimately there's a commercial business case for it. Apparently they outperform other workplaces by between 5 to 7%. So if you're looking for commercial return, it's there. But your employees, they're 50% more likely not to suffer from burnout. They're 40% more likely to stay with you. So there's a retention argument. And in terms of their own performance and well-being, they're twice as likely to have good well-being, and they're 30% more likely to perform. So there's lots and lots of stats I could probably throw in you. It's the entrepreneurial commercial business case for why you should do it. It's not just Q5, it's for everybody. And the key thing really is about understanding that there is genuine value in doing it, not just for the company, because people might go, oh, brilliant, right, we'll get a purpose now because we'll grow the business by 5 to 7%. But actually, back to that thing about healthy organisations, it's about people being healthy within your organisation, having a purpose, making a difference, connecting with people, and living a good life as they also run through the journey of their working life.
I like the idea of what you said earlier about as well, starting with the why, because if it's not authentic, if you think I've got a purpose, because that'll get me 5% growth. It's not really going to work, is it? And I have seen that as well in people that go, well, just have this as a veneer on the front of and continue just being.
How many times have we seen the piece of paper or the thing on the wall that says this is who we are?
Yeah.
And people walk past it and go, that's not who we are. I wish we were, or it's written down. We need a purpose, let's write it down and let's put it in the drawer and get on with the day job. I mean, it happens all the time and it's inauthentic and people aren't stupid. We all can see it. You've got to live your purpose. If you're not living your purpose, then, I think there's another great stat, isn't it? It takes years sometimes to build trust, and it takes seconds to destroy it. So you can have a fantastic relationship with your workforce, and it can be destroyed in seconds, and you can live the outcome of that, from people leaving. So it's got to be authentic. Yes. You've got to live it. You've got to challenge it if it's not being lived, or suffer the consequences of that.
And make it into recruitment. As you say, it can be seconds. You can make a bad hire, they can undo years of work. And again, we see this in a lot of organisations where they'll have that purpose and it is authentic, but then they'll not even consider it in the recruiting process. Bring somebody in, undermines a whole lot. And the internal belief starts to be eroded. So it's critical, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, that's back to the why, the Simon Sinek why. People don't buy what you do; they buy why you do it, and you're selling that to people who are like-minded, and they're the people that you want on the bus. Absolutely. They're the people that you want to recruit and bring in, and it's interesting. I mean, like I say, I was the marketing director for Q5. The most It's interesting, the highest stats for our website, the homepage, obviously everyone goes to the homepage, that's what we all do. After that, it's the people. That's the second page they go to, is the people. And then the third page is the purpose page. Right. It's the about us. So, and if you think about it, it's like, okay, I've got to go to the homepage because that's the homepage. But actually, what am I interested in? The people I'm working with and the ethos that the company lives by. And that's how people, particularly Gen Z is increasing, as I say, 79% versus 70%. That's what they're looking for. It's like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. We start off with the basics. We need shelter, we need food, etc. And we expect that now from companies. We're expecting to get paid, quite frankly, right? We're expecting to get paid. So once those needs are met, it's the next layer. It's the next layer up, and that's where purposeful work comes.
Has it changed what Q5 are doing? You go back to those soft skills when you're going into companies. Are you emphasising that side of what they're doing more than you would have been 5-7 years ago?
Yes. I mean, we would always have said our USP, our unique selling point, was the how we do things, not just the why, but the how. We would always say we work with you. We see ourselves as an extension of your team. We're here to support and enable you. We don't come in and land and expand with a big tome. Sometimes management consultancies have a bad reputation for, and then kind of take the money and leave. We've always been about the how, and we would say we would inject that in when we're with companies, because ultimately what we're trying to do is make an intervention, upskill, improve, pivot sometimes, set people on a new course, but ultimately leave them in a way that they're more healthy because of our interventions. That has to be part of the conversation. Yeah.
And now you are the director of the foundation, fairly recently. What do you want to do with it? Where do you want to take it?
So there's obviously the good that we do. We donate our time. As I say, pop-up consulting is probably the biggest bit. We're going to work with probably 25 different charities and non-for-profits this year, helping them to achieve their purpose and their aims. So that's the key, is the output, and the impact on third parties is important. But there's another part for us as well. There's the internal piece, and that comes back to actually our own purpose and our own culture. So we're using it as a vehicle to get Q5ers to work together. Often they're in client work, sometimes for 6 months, and they're not with Q5ers. So it's actually a vehicle to get them to work together, not just with the groups that they're working with at clients, but across the organisation. And there's multiple benefits for that. One is we upskill them, so we get more junior, newer people into the organisation working with more senior people. We get them to develop their own thinking. So we use it as an engine for learning and development. We create connections so that they're connected in. That sense of community is so very important, because they might be with Channel 4 for 6 months, but they're ultimately a Q5 and they have to feel a belonging to the place where they work. And also that sense of fulfillment. As I say, 70%, 79% of Gen Zers are looking for purpose. So it's a vehicle to help do that. You're not just working, you're also doing purposeful good in the work that you do.
Do you, and having worked with Q5 ourselves, you know, as you say, you rarely have people on the bench. You know, you're normally like 100% full tilt into clients.
Yeah.
How do you balance the time? Because as you said, there's lots of benefits internally in retention, motivation, engagement. How do you balance the time when you've got the external pressures of clients who need your services, and need is the real word. They don't just want your services, they need your service. And then you're doing the foundation work on the side. How do you balance that?
So client always comes first, always has to. Right? I mean, that is our main purpose, is making organisations healthier. So they have to come first. And then it's about being pragmatic and a new kind of term of the moment, dynamic resourcing. You know, so if you're off project, if you've just finished on a project and you're free for 2-3 days, that's a great time to come and work for the foundation. And it's a great way to sort of renew as well. So you might have been doing a very intense piece of work. Well, come and work with a small or mid-sized non-for-profit and just kind of get some renewal. So that's how we tend to do it.
We've talked on a couple of podcasts about what actually you get from going and working with a charity, working with you in terms of just new ideas and going back almost to the beginning. You know, you're going into big companies where maybe the entrepreneurship has gone because, you know, it's got too big and all the rest of it. Are they learning in a lot of ways? And as you said, sort of being regrounded by working with these charities and smaller companies?
Hugely. I mean, we might go into a charity where there's only 25 employees. You're going to get to know everyone and you're going to hear, you know, start to finish, what are the knotty problems, and you're going to get immersed in that. And that's incredibly rewarding. You know, they're trusting you with their, you know, what is a very precious entity. And also it's an opportunity to build the skills. So, for example, we've got organisational design experts who've said, actually, I want to learn more about culture. I want to learn more about leadership development. Bring them into that space. Get them to do a project where they're actually learning and developing in themselves. And as a consequence of that, interestingly, I've had consultants say, actually, I think we can develop a whole new offering because of this. So we actually developed a fundraising strategy offering off the base of the work that we did in the foundation, which we're now using in pop-up, but we're also now in conversations with charities about as well to help them, bigger charities that would afford a management consulting firm to help them develop their fundraising strategy. So yeah, it's brilliant. It's R&D, it's everything. It's brilliant.
It all comes full circle, doesn't it, Gordon? I mean, we've talked on so many of these podcasts now about social impact and how important it is for companies. And I know it's really important to climate, something that's really important, but it's almost getting that message through maybe to companies that haven't got it. It's a full circle thing. It's not just about going out and doing good and ticking a box or whatever. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, as I was saying, if you think about the cost of retention, if you've got a very high if you've got a very low retention rate, really, do the maths on that, and you'll know how much that's costing you in terms of recruitment costs. So, you know, there are multiple benefits to doing this that you might not see initially, but certainly I've been doing this now for 7 years with Q5, and we set up Pop-Up 5 years ago, and they're pretty exponential.
And I think that's the thing. I can always sit with the hardest nosed CFO and show the commercial benefit of doing things in the right way, you know, because, and talking about people being on the bench, I remember when my wife was working in a big IT firm, she'd be working on a £250 million project and then like 100 hours a week, and then she'd be on the bench and be worried for her job, thinking I might get booted. Yeah. Whereas if you're working on it's almost like a flywheel still going inside your head. Whereas if you've got work on a foundation project that allows you to kind of not necessarily slow down, but don't feel like you just sat on a bench and being a cost, you're actually adding value. Yeah. All of those pieces are great takeaways for our listeners to be, that they can put in their own organisations. And it's not, one of the things I think we see a lot when we talk to people about impact and social impact in their businesses is they worry it's going to cost them a fortune. Well, actually it doesn't. You know, it's relatively not easy to set up, but low cost to set up. And then within probably less than a year, you're seeing a financial benefit within the organisation. I think some of the things you talk about is great takeaways that people can do in their own businesses.
Absolutely. There's a fantastic person I work with in Leeds, actually, who, Anna Fair, is a fantastic lady. But interestingly, when she was thinking about moving jobs and she came to work for Q5, before the interview, she'd heard about Q5 and the good work that we were doing locally. Because she was plugged into places like Catch in Hare Hills and Leeds Learning Alliance. Now, that's not the reason why we were doing the work, but actually it meant that when she came to talk to us at interview, she was already half sold on the company because she knew we were doing the right things.
And is that important that you are giving back locally to where you have made your base in the north of England?
Absolutely, yeah. So the foundation actually is broken into 4 parts. I've talked about pop-up consulting. The other 3, though, are pathways for young people. That also came out of the pandemic. The young people, as we know, were particularly hard hit. And then obviously following the pandemic, we've had a very uneven time, shall we say, economically. So actually the second string of the foundation is positive pathways for young people. We do a lot of work in that area. The third one is around reports. So we've a lot of big brains in the company. So sometimes if people can't do pop-up consulting, they'll dedicate their time to helping write a report. So we did some work on the Levelling Up Commission, for example, a few years ago. And then the fourth one is about partnership within the local communities where we have our offices. So that, obviously for us, it's Leeds, London and Cardiff in the UK. And when in that respect, we look at who is active, who needs our support, where can we make the big difference. And for us locally, it's the Leeds Learning Alliance and it's Catch in Hare Hills.
I think that's really important because we talk about this on a smallish scale at business level. So there's the financial benefits of retention, etc., and recruitment. So as you say, people know about your organisation from the things externally to the core of the job.
Yes.
That's the same for a region. West Yorkshire's trying to attract FDI, companies coming in from overseas. Well, if the region doesn't have a purpose and doesn't display itself and demonstrate its unique selling point, it happens on a macro level, by connecting those communities, it's absolutely critical. And you talked about trust as well, getting people. One of the things that we found originally when we were doing impact work at Climb was people thought it was a marketing stunt. Their instant reaction was, "Oh, are you doing this?" So there's a lot of things that we do at Climb, that we don't talk about. We just do it, and no one knows. It's often a different part of the event. Did you get any resistance? Did you see any of that, of people think when you go into communities thinking, "Is this you just trying to sell us something from a different angle?" Or
no, because we're very clear up front, actually. We're not looking for a return. With the only time we ever ask for a return, actually, was with Pop-Up. We say if you enjoyed working with us, if we made an intervention that was positive, we'd ask you to do 2 things. One is write a testimonial, which is like 1 to 2 lines that we can use on the website, because that also encourages other people to get involved in Pop-Up. And secondly, give us a shout out on social media. And again, that's just a way of promoting Pop-Up without having to actually pay for it from the marketing. So they're the 2 things that we ask for. I think we're lucky, Gordon, where we live in the north, in that there's that natural sort of civic duty, collective collaboration exists in the city of Leeds and in the wider West Yorkshire region. You see it actually with the council. They often put on events where they bring together public and private sector bodies and basically say, we're all in it together. What are we going to do about this, that and the other? I was recently at one actually with the new CEO, Ed, where he was looking at the sort of the projection for the next 5 years for the city of Leeds. And he was literally saying, everyone in the room, you've all got your own ideas. I want to hear them. So I think we're lucky. We're in a region that gets it and knows what its USP is. And that makes us getting involved much easier.
And that's why we have our big event here, because it was just very easy to get people. We have an event that looks like a commercial about business growth and investment, etc. outwardly, but its core pillars is all around social mobility, equity, inclusion, gender equality, etc. And everyone just gets on board. It seemed really easy. We did get a little bit of scepticism at the beginning of people, some communities really, where I think probably pre-COVID, they'd had organisations going in. It was just a marketing stunt. I think now that's less of a case. But the beauty of being here for us is that community, is this big business community that comes together. Yeah,
absolutely.
And for you, having travelled the world, you're global, and your husband as well, have you come back to Yorkshire and maybe found your purpose with the foundation?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I would say I always had a purpose, but as I said earlier, I think purpose is a journey, and the purpose I had in my 20s and 30s is different now to my 50s. 30 years plus of working, and hopefully I've got some information that might be useful to other people. My purpose now is much more about the giving back element and perhaps the legacy for Q5 as we move forward. Yeah.
And when you hand that foundation on, what do you hope you'll be handing on?
So I hope those 4 pillars are even more robust, the 4 pillars I spoke about earlier. And I hope that traction continues at the rate of knots that we have it at the moment. That would be my hope. The expansion model for me would be more around our newer offices. So obviously where you've offices now that are very established, like the Leeds office, we've got long-term relationships now with the Leeds Learning Alliance and Catch, but actually we've newer offices. So we've offices in Saudi Arabia, say in Oman. We've a relatively new office in Houston, and also in Melbourne in Australia. And it's about making sure that they're also doing what we're doing.
And we've got a huge community of impact businesses, CICs, etc. around Climb. How do they find you, and how do they connect with you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I mean, Q5, just go look for Q5 Partners, the website. That's where we'll be, or Q5 on LinkedIn. Okay. You'll find us. We're green, so we tend to stand out as a management consulting firm. We're not blue and grey. Look for the green.
And just finally, has there been somebody you've helped in the local community, something that's been said that's really stuck with you? When you're having a bad day and you're fighting the beast, and this a phrase pops back into your head, or you see something that somebody's written about how you've helped, and you just think, this is the way forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the charities I talked to, actually, we've had a couple actually recently that were very kindly agreed to be filmed for our 5-year anniversary of Pop-Up, Patchwork Hub and The Big Issue down in London. And both of them basically said that the intervention made a fundamental change to the direction that they're travelling in. And it was a positive thing because these organisations don't have the resources all the time, quite frankly, because they are running so hard for the purpose for which they are employed. So the fact that we were able to do an intervention, take them out of that and make a fundamental difference, and ultimately something for the longer term, that healthy organisation longer term, is incredibly rewarding. But I mean, I think I have the best job in Q5 because I get to work with 24 charities plus the partners every year. And pretty much every time they say we've made a difference. So aren't I the lucky one? Got the best job.
You are indeed. Annabel, thanks so much for your time. A healthy lesson. Find your purpose. Join us again for another Conversations at the Summit.